Welcome everyone to our webinar today on why CRO is more than just A/B testing. We'll start with a couple of introductions just for those of you who don't know us. We are of course here to learn from each other today, hopefully, and here's our first lesson of the day, which is that if you're going to let other people produce slides for you, definitely let them check it out before you go live with the webinar. And with that, I introduce Matt.
Yeah, thanks for that, Sandeep. I don't know if that's stitching me up actually, because I'm sure you've got far, far worse photos from that very same night out as well. So yeah, I'm Matt Smith. I'm the CEO of Webtrends Optimize. I've been around in the Webtrends business now under sort of various guises now for the past 5 or 6 years. I was here in our previous form while we were part of Webtrends Inc. And I've overseen the separation and the growth and the path that we're now on as a business as we move forward and in the new world as it is today. There's nothing quite like that picture to highlight what a difference a year makes. That was our Christmas party almost a year ago to the day, I think. So yeah, very different world we find ourselves in today. Naturally or normally we'd be doing this in person, but here we are in the digital form. So thanks for joining us, everyone. And thanks, Sandeep.
Welcome. And I'm Sandeep, everyone. So I run the product team at Webtrends Optimize. To do a lot of the fun stuff, basically, R&D, public speaking, blogging, architecture, and stuff like that. Been around since 2012, built thousands of tests probably between myself and team over the years. Matt and I basically have worked together for a while, running Webtrends Optimize alongside a few other good people as well. We've seen a lot of change, most notably when we kind of broke off into our own company a couple of years ago and bought these gorgeous offices, as everyone can see. A little hard to spot from the picture as well, but they're literally bars on the windows just behind the camera here. But we did this, put a lot of graft in. Matt got the opportunity to bring out his power tools, which he absolutely loves playing with. Building up our office, building walls as it was as well, desks by hand, and basically ending up with an office which our team is very happy to work from. Pre-COVID, of course, you have now seen as much of the office this year as I have. Yeah, and then over to Matt then.
Yeah, another interesting reminder of the sort of world that we're in at the moment. I find myself in that office today on my own. It's quite a sorry sight when sitting here on my own, but the Wi-Fi is far better than I get at home, so it was worth the journey. So yeah, thank you everyone for taking the time to be with us and join us today. The subject that we've put out there, or we asked LinkedIn to vote for a subject that they'd like us to cover. It seems that LinkedIn's awash with webinars nowadays, and we wanted to do something that was for everybody else and that people thought it worthwhile, and who better to ask than LinkedIn and the audience that we'd be looking to sort of speak to and share this with. So CRO, it's a common misconception that CRO is just A/B testing. It's commonly thrown at me, and as we all know, it's not. It's far, far greater than that. It's a toolkit of additional features, benefits, and things that you can do to help drive that sort of golden dream of getting towards a great conversion. We'll take you through some sort of hopefully thought-provoking things today, and hopefully it's enjoyable for everyone. So just a bit of sort of, let's set the scene first, bit of housekeeping. We will be recording this session. We're greedy and we will want to use this time and time again. So we'll be using this and sharing it on our YouTube channel. For those that have signed up and those that haven't been able to make it today, we'll look to share that as well with them afterwards. Feedback and questions. Me and Sandeep do a lot of meetings together and we love to be challenged. So any questions, anything like that, please share them in the Q&A for us. We'd love to answer your questions. This time's for you, it's not for us. So anything, please throw it at us and we'll answer that. If we can't in the time that we have, we'll certainly follow up and answer every single question afterwards. And at the end of this, feedback's welcome. This is the first webinar we've done in our new guise as Webtrends Optimize. We've had a flattering response in the number of registers and attendees. And your feedback's key to us so that we can sort of look to do more and tailor this as we drive forward. Sandeep, over to you to kick us off, please.
Sure. So yeah, when we talk to a lot of people about CRO, a lot of people see it kind of like this. CRO is A/B testing, or it's kind of the same thing-ish, more or less the same. But in reality, there is so much more involved here. If we look at A/B testing by itself, it's the combination of a whole bunch of activities. It's kind of the vehicle by which you do all of these things and more as well. If we look at incremental improvements to UI and to UX, this is probably what most people think of and use A/B testing to do. You see a problem, you fix it, you get your lift, you move on to the next problem. Whether you're in-house or working for most agencies, I guess this is kind of the most common thing people find themselves doing most of the time. To the side then we have product releases as well. So kind of adopting experimentation as a key mechanism by which you do product releases is where we see a lot more of these advanced programs going. Let's say, for example, you had a bunch of functionality and you could easily release it or not. You could easily work on other things as well. How do you understand the impact of doing it? You use A/B tests, the controlled trials that we run, quite often paired with a delivery mechanism like a feature flag as an on-off or a percentage exposure. And yeah, let people decide and guide you as to what the right thing is to build. For people who go down that route, you should do it knowing full well that things may be slower but better. You're not just building and releasing, which is the kind of natural cadence of engineering cycles, but you're thinking as well. It's kind of what should we build? What's that decision based on? How are other things that we did build? How did they perform? Did we try a few variations along the way of, if your application could look a few different ways? Did you kind of cut and carve your way towards a better product by doing that kind of testing as well? There is a belief I have, which is kind of, if you want to be quick, just make a decision and don't look back. If things go wrong, just deal with them, and hopefully you're kind of smarter and more experienced next time, so you'll make better first decisions. But don't dawdle. That kind of hackathon MVP mindset. Just do it. As Nike would say. And when we're building our product, this is kind of how we work pretty often as well. This kind of think less, do more attitude, where we talk to enough people. Hopefully, we know we're doing the right thing. So we're not crapping on that approach at all. But it's a big one. If you want to be good, make sure you're doing the right thing in the first place is kind of the right thing to do. You take fewer missteps, you make better gains along the way because you have variations. You're kind of understanding what works best, not just does one thing work better or not. So especially when you're not surrounded by super, senior people with really deep experience in the area, this is kind of your stamp of quality is to make sure you're experimenting. So back to our list then, we also have personalization, which in itself is a kind of microcosm of a whole bunch of things, looking at, recency and relevancy, guidance, nudging, going really, really far beyond that kind of high mat that we used to have at the top of websites when you log in. Still do sometimes, but far beyond that, you're kind of looking to talk directly to a user where you can, or at least make sure you're kind of stood in the right room with a microphone, so you've got your captive audience almost. That's what we're hoping for there. And then of course we have this kind of idea of innovative experiences. It's hard to speak for a lot of the other agencies out there, but we spend a lot of our time building these kind of brand new things for people. Where companies are looking to stand out and have good ideas maybe, but not necessarily the experience or the resource to make it happen, is quite good for us, and we get to vet these decisions with data when we go live. We'll iterate, we'll make sure we're testing. But yeah, kind of more on that later as well. So looking then, kind of what is CRO? We've spoken about A/B testing a fair bit now then. So let me start by saying this. Most kind of processes for making things better don't start with doing. And if you consider A/B testing as the doing, most processes start with learning. You research, you understand, and CRO is kind of the process for making things better overall. So we should start with solid research. Um, this view that you guys see is a very simplistic view. There are, of course, other things kind of encompassed in the world of CRO. But looking first at using analytics, analyzing that data. If you're practicing CRO, you're probably already doing this. You're looking at your journeys, trying to find out which pages have problems. But one question is kind of how far do you go? How deep are you actually looking? Let's take the sample journey here, for example. We see a problem. There's, not enough people getting through to our next step, going from, user details through to payment. 30% drop off is a lot. It's not too far from conversion. So it feels like a good page to work on. The closer you are to a sale, the more likely you are that the thing you're testing directly leads to the final goal. So it feels like a good page to work on. And at this point, a lot of people would sit down with their teams and kind of tear the page apart with criticism. You might look at things like live validation, better labeling, using a single column format or more padding, tooltips, progress bars. Like all of these things sound pretty great. I'm sure we've used them at some point in our careers and kind of seen decent results from them. But the real question is kind of, are you looking at your page in real detail? How long have users been on the page for? If they're interacting, what are they actually seeing? What errors are they generating? All of these things matter. If you take even the landing page as an example, you could build some great content below the fold, which you think will help convince people to move further down the journey. But what if you then realize that people bounce within 2 or 3 seconds of hitting your page? Does that matter anymore? Probably not, I would imagine. So let's say we start looking at interaction on the form and do kind of a drop-off analysis. Just looking through the numbers, then we see kind of 80%-ish of people get onto our form. 100% of people make it through the first field, but we see a drop-off of, let's say, 10% between people who go to set a password and get through to the next step. And the rest of the steps, there's no drop-off. So, we kind of notice from here, analyzing progress through a form, where our problem is. A very simplistic example, of course. So armed with this information, would you still be thinking about progress bars or live validation or a single column layout? Probably not, I would imagine. So what if then you overlaid errors as well and realized that, let's say 95% of people who got stuck on this field hit a password complexity error? Again, would you think about relabeling all of your fields, padding? These things stop mattering when you're looking at data in real detail. And one really reassuring thing about looking at stuff in this much detail as well, you can say 95% of that 10% of users that didn't progress through our form, so kind of 9.5% of all users, is who we stand to gain by fixing this problem, and that's pretty huge. You can deal with this kind of a problem very easily. You could have a decisive change like kicking the account creation process through to a post-purchase journey. So do it on a confirmation page or in a thank you email or something along those lines, and that's your problem solved, probably. So definitely make sure you're looking at data in this level. Also, don't forget about your testing timelines as well. If we said generously even, that your third or fourth attempt led you down this kind of an avenue towards solving problems, that tests take a couple of days to build, a couple of days to test. You need roughly a week of data. to have a decent idea of direction, at least of how things are going. How much time would you have wasted in running tests that didn't win and weren't really relevant versus trying to sit down and gain this level of insight? If you understand your problems well, you can deal with the actual problem. It's the same thing I tell the devs when they're building tests. Don't just start coding. Try and think of absolutely everything beforehand. Know what you're getting yourself into. So when you actually go to solve a problem, you're actually solving the problem. Overall, it's faster. You will deliver more in a year. Success rates are happier. Everyone's happier when this is kind of the way that you're working. So we then have voice of customer, which is an often underutilized form of research. It takes a lot of time to sift through surveys and rich feedback, and that's why I appreciate a lot of time that people don't do that versus looking in aggregate data and analytics tool or something like that. And not that I'd say this for all cases, but if you ignore the middle ground voices, the people that are kind of content for a minute, you end up with two really important things, right? You end up with people that absolutely love you, and you end up with people that kind of really loathe or hate you as well.
And those people are important for two reasons, right, Sandeep? So everybody loves good feedback. Everybody, you get something from it. You get a lift, you get a buzz. It motivates the team, it motivates the business, and it gives real drive. And it warrants what you're doing is the right thing to do. And it's fantastic. High fives all around. Everybody loves a bit of that, and it's brilliant. However, the data that we glean from that is brilliant. It helps us. It's sanity checks that we're doing the right thing. But outside of that, let's look at those people that dislike us. Let's look at those negative reviews and how we then adapt that. We're in a world at the moment where people are engaging far, far more with online experiences and digital assets than they have ever done before. And ourselves and the data that we've got internally within the business, we're seeing surveys being a key area where people are giving those quick responses, quick answers, and that quick feedback. And learnings from that help a great deal. So looking at the negative responses, it doesn't only help you carve out and improve your online experience and how that customer integrated with your UX, your website, or how they've navigated through things. It also helps with learnings offline. We've helped clients that have found problems with their returns process or their delays in their delivery process. But on top of that, problems with people signing up for pre-orders and such like. And it's helped them as a business take that problem away, analyze it, and resolve it for the future. Not just for now, for today, but continuous as we roll forward. So by coupling your analytics data and that core rich sort of data that it's giving you with this, the voice of the customer, with the reviews and the surveys, you get a far greater understanding and a broader view of what people are doing and how they're experiencing your website.
Yeah, exactly. So kind of hopping ahead, then we understand the power of rich feedback and user testing, kind of in a lab setting, is another place where you get to find real holes in your journey. If you're asking people to do certain things and you're sitting and observing, scribbling down everything you can onto post-its and praying someone with the organizational skills to then make sense of the absolute wave of post-its that you've had, it's probably going to look a little something like this. This is how you probably feel. Slight sidetrack, but fun fact as well. When I was designing this slide in PowerPoint, I saw this just along the bottom. I said click to add notes, and I thought, damn, this is the last thing we need to be doing in this situation.
That could have been another photo from a Christmas party of yesteryear.
Certainly feels like it sometimes. But that kind of rich feedback is super useful. You learn some great things just from observing. We then have prototyping, where you're sitting down. It might be kind of lo-fi wireframes. Maybe you're looking at user stories and plotting out what a good page would look like. You can run things through sites like usertesting.com as well, just to gain a pulse and a bit of a feedback as well based on mockups or something like that. And then we kind of finish on A/B testing, which is what a lot of us I'm sure are familiar with. This idea of kind of building your variations and letting people decide the winner based on their actions. And of course, we have other stuff beyond this as well, like I mentioned, iterating and all that kind of stuff. Now, all of these things are CRO, but saying I look at session recordings is not that much more useful than saying I run A/B tests. What's the actual problems you're trying to solve? That's the real question here. What are we looking to do? If you're testing to make marginal improvements, you're probably expecting marginal results as well. I've been on webinars where I've seen graphs like this, and it says 1% better every day, and sky's the limit. 1% worse every day, and you're not that far from where you started. So risk is minimal, and go for it. And stuff like this is super inspirational, sure, but it's not real. If you can improve things by 1% every single day with 1 day of effort to make it happen and get feedback super quickly, you're probably in quite a mess to begin with. And if you're in that kind of a situation anyway, you're probably seeing lifts of 20, 50, or 100% if you're making good decisions. So it's not real. There's also this idea of kind of diminishing returns for your test over time. People will get used to your experiences over time. They won't have a stronger reaction to them, whether favorably or otherwise. And so, these are things that, a simple idea like this certainly doesn't take into account. So, what's the real point here? If you think about what actually matters, it should be kind of not what matters today, but what matters 5 years from now. Testing a headline, for example, might seem important today, but the likelihood is it's not really that important, is it? Yeah.
I think it's a strong argument of sort of tactical versus strategic. 5 years is a big window to look at. I think even the government came out yesterday with sort of looking at the budgets and where we're at as a country, and even the government can only look a year ahead, which is difficult. It's a difficult question for business to answer. I think the key thing comes here with is to look at the long-term vision of the business, follow that strategic path and the strategic goals of the business. Button testing is great, yeah, but it's so much more than button testing. We need to be driving the entire power of CRO A/B testing, however we want to describe it, and align it clearly with the business goals and where that business is heading. Is it the high street? Is it online? Is it omni-channel? And align well with them goals towards whether it be a 6-month timescale, a 1-year timescale, or a 5-year timescale.
Yeah, and it is difficult. If we look at CRO versus a lot of disciplines that you put beside us, we are relatively new. A lot of people understand things like PPC a lot more. You spend, you acquire people, some of them will buy. For us, when we have this desire to prove our worth, and CRO is very much a return-driven, approach that you take, a discipline that you do, it's very easy to get kind of wrapped up in chasing lifts all the time, especially with agencies where you kind of build on this idea of delivering returns. But thinking long term is the only real end goal. If you do that, you're making sure the business is doing well, years from now, which is what we all actually want at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And there are two things that matter long term. The first of this is innovation or kind of competitive differentiation. The idea of finding your special sauce. And this is a very simple illustration. Plotting innovation in orange and customer demand in black. In most situations, customer expectation is going to continue to grow all the time. If you look at a year ago compared to now, I would have expected very few companies a year ago to be doing click and collect, especially when you look at smaller independent retailers. But if you look at companies today during lockdown, you kind of look at them like, how are you still around if they're not doing it? And so when demand grows, it will happen. It might happen in bursts, like we kind of see here. Um, if you look at augmented reality, for example, thanks to Snapchat, that kind of thing became a very mainstream, normal thing to do. And when you're shopping for glasses now, it's an amazing experience, and you kind of expect it when you go on sites. I find myself hunting around for that little button now. When AI enters the mainstream and people expect to be understood by Alexa, even if they have a really thick Scottish accent or something, these things are expected. So if your innovation becomes stagnant, flat or slow, um, user demand is only going to keep heading in one direction anyway. And at some point, it will meet what you do, and at some point, it will go and exceed what you're capable of doing. And that's the point at which things are dangerous.
We as a tech business as well, Sandeep, we've been around for 20 years and we've been on that roller coaster of innovation, demand, etc. The business rose and sort of fell and demised in Webtrends days. And fortunately now we're out of the corporate mentality of Webtrends, and the business is innovating and growing again. When I often look at things like this, you talk to people and they generally feel if they're not innovating, they're not driving forward, then they're just standing still. In actual fact, that's a load of garbage. If you're not innovating and you're not investing or driving forward, you're going backwards, because everybody around you is driving harder and faster, and they're taking things forward and they're attacking the market harder. So it's key and it's vital that businesses continue to innovate, continue to drive towards that goal.
Yeah, 100%. And this is kind of echoed by words I saw recently from Pete at CXL, where he says, one of the biggest problems that a lot of people just look, one of the biggest problems is a lot of people look at other people's websites and just try and one up them. They're trying to create a better version of what they saw. They miss out on the fact that differentiation strategy is often how you beat the competition. How do you be better? And Matt, you probably have heaps of experience in that, working in travel, right?
Yeah, I worked in travel for as many years as I care to admit. The travel is pretty much a key sort of subject matter for that. There are a surplus amount of hotels and a select amount of hotels and flight times, etc. And how do you differentiate yourself from Expedia, Booking.com, Thomas Cook, anybody else that's out there? What's your differentiator? And it could be price, it could be promotions, it could be anything. Yeah, there are several areas and several touch points there. How you interact with someone and how you create that user experience when they're first sort of engaging with you online is key to that. Making them feel that warm, fuzzy feeling like they get when they go, like make them feel like they're on holiday. Yeah, you don't want to make them feel like they're booking a holiday. You want to transport them to that. So that engagement with them online is key in how you do that and how you interact with that, and give them that warm, fuzzy feeling. And then there's also other measures that you can get offline, and you can gauge that through testing as well with the feedback elements that we discussed previously. How good your customer service, how good your follow-ups, how easy and how do you simplify getting the right information in front of people at the right time to inform that purchase or that booking or that order.
Yeah. UX, both offline and on site as well, is a massive differentiator, isn't it? Like, I remember the first time I used Booking.com, can't remember, probably going to Magaluf or something as like an 18-year-old. And you launch the map view and you go, oh, this is where all the cool bars are, or the wherever it is that you want to be out. Look at the map view and go, right, which hotels are nearby, and do a bit of filtering, and suddenly you have a very good idea of where you can stay. And that, I remember that moment going, this is so easy to do now. It was huge.
You mentioned using that experience as an 18-year-old. I remember delivering that experience for Thomas Cook as a 24, 25-year-old. So thanks for making me feel old there. I appreciate that.
Anytime. So, that's kind of innovation. And the other side is looking at, solving real business problems. If you think about SWOT analysis, for example, looking at things which you identify very clearly as weaknesses and threats. And this, if you're solving business problems, um, at a certain point, you've got to stop caring about lift. Um, if you're trying to make sure the business is relevant 5 years from now, some of the best results we have ever seen are from knowing that conversion rate wasn't affected by something strategic we're doing, which is very, very good for the business. So, being hung up on lifts, I know it's a challenge. We spoke about it earlier as well. It's not the easiest of things to do when you feel the need to prove yourself. But if people are on board with this idea of you helping shape the business and vet and prove certain things, being hung up on lifts is very much the last thing that we should be worried about. So, what are your problems? Let's look inside your head for a minute. If we think about things that are actual business problems, these are things which we might not encounter in our day to day, but it's all stuff we can help with. Cash flow feels like the most obvious one, right? If you don't have enough cash coming in, or it's not quick enough, or maybe it feels like there's more cash to be had. Manual effort, you could have good people spending time doing things which you look at and go, this is, this isn't the best use of their time. Call centers is another kind of very relevant one nowadays. They're costly to run. During COVID and trying to social distance, if you have hundreds of people in an office, is damn near impossible. Too many returns is another. If shoppers are indecisive or they're not sure about sizes and stuff like that, it becomes a real cost trying to handle the returning of products and resale and working out what to do with them afterwards as well, not just getting them back. Responding in crises are, another one. Their processes can be slow. Sometimes they are slow for good reason. But when emergencies happen, you really need to be able to jump in and do something about it. And of course, the one which I'm sure all of us are familiar with, which is this idea of, if you're getting poor ROI on the marketing you're doing, marketing, SEO, whatever it is, then, again, genuine business problem. You're spending money, you're hoping for a return, but it's not quite there. Quick disclaimer as well before we jump too far. There are some technologies that we'll mention here. We don't have any affiliation to them, so love them or leave them 1-star reviews or whatever you need to do. It's just making that clear. So if you think about cash flows being the problem, it's hard to predict when it's coming in, especially if people buy in frequently. What sort of things can you advise people as a CRO person to do to deal with that? Subscription models and trying to encourage people down that journey could be one. Instead of one-off shopping, for example, we could be trying to encourage people to use automatic deliveries. Amazon have subscribe and save, which works incredibly well. Harry's have shaving products, which they have been doing for a while. I think any posh coffee that you go to buy, you'll probably find that they're trying to encourage people to go down a plan as opposed to a one-off purchase. I've seen it with laundry capsules on Instagram as well recently. So these things are all available to you. Elastic pricing is a really interesting one that we've been talking about recently again with some customers as well. If you work in the kind of business where your stock is kind of defined, let's say you have a 5,000 of something. If you notice surges in demand, we should be able to at least suggest, if not go down the route of saying, what if pricing was elastic and it stretched a bit? If it went up and the demand was still there, at least you're able to make more money from what products you do have. And then we have this idea of kind of monthly billing versus annual as well. Do we understand the impact of one over the other? If you do one, can the other serve you well? If I just happen to be here looking at Spotify Premium and buying that on my phone, it doesn't take a mathematician to work out that 10 quid a month is the same as 120 a year. But yet Spotify still choose to offer this option. For the customers that choose to take this, Spotify know two very useful things. You've got that customer for a year. They're unlikely to go to Apple or Amazon or YouTube Music or Deezer or someone else. You very much got them. And one very useful thing is knowing that you've basically got all that money in one go. It's like a 1,100% advance on your yearly cash. And not that all of us have the opportunity to sit down in front of boards or execs, but being able to explain to people that you have the ability to pull that much money forward. Even if 1% of people went down that route, that's give or take 10, 11% of your yearly income that you're getting in advance. And being able to explain the value of that to people, there's a lot of it there. And while you might be looking at this going kind of what's in it for the user, things don't always have to make sense. If Internet Explorer can be your default browser and ask for it, then you're certainly capable of doing other things as well.
Sandeep, there's a couple of questions that have come in. I don't know if you want to pick them off.
Yeah, sure. The 3 months free is a short-term promo, by the way, Bav. Yeah, I don't think that's normally there. I think they might do a month for new customers or something like that. Let's see. Geez. I think I've just hopped forward like a lot of slides. There we go. Recording. This is being recorded. Yep. CRO specialists feel that being limited by the idea of. So what are your tips for CRO specialists that feel like CROs, being stigmatized as just A/B testing, and how do you break out of it? From what I can see, at least as well, is identifying problems where you can. Talking to people obviously helps as well. Again, depending on the scale of the company, you don't always have the luxury of sitting down with people who are discussing the inner challenges of a business with you. But if you did, it's being able to say, hey, I'm not just here to run tests, I'm here to solve actual problems for you. We're giving you kind of a lot of ideas of what these challenges might be. The times where we've managed to sit down with people and discuss the idea of not just building tests, but this slide, for example, where we're looking at things like automation. When people understand the value of that, and what it can have to a business as opposed to just looking for an increase in conversion, a lot of people hopefully would be receptive to that idea, I think. But I do appreciate that there is probably a whole bunch of people with kind of different types of companies that you work in here. Different people that you interact with as well. That's certainly a challenge.
I think it's an overall education piece, right? So people are naive and people do just refer to it as A/B testing. And I think that's because of where we've come and what we've done in the past. We need to educate our clients, our users, our prospects that CRO is far greater than what we're doing today. And that's us as individuals, as specialists in our industry, proving that it's not all about a button test. Yeah, button tests can be valuable and can yield quite a lot, but it's bringing them on that journey and sharing the wider capabilities and educating users around the disciplines of CRO and not just the finite sort of micro view of A/B test itself.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, hopefully that kind of dips the toe in answering some of these. Yeah, we'll kind of hold on to some and circle back as well. Looking then kind of forward again at the next one, which is kind of doing things manually. Quite often, you'll see a lot of people doing things, and you go, there are better things that people could be doing. Um, these things again could be good for a business. So, in the dev world, for example, for better or worse, we have this idea where we say, we're happy to spend 2 weeks automating something that only takes 2 hours to do. And whilst in principle that might feel like a hell of a waste of time, we're thinking about a couple of things. It's kind of like scale and headspace. If 20 people needed to do this thing once a month, for example, there's 40 hours a month, which as a company you're using. And, by the second month, if these things are automated, broken even on effort, anything beyond that second month, there's a huge efficiency as a team. Everyone can go off and do things that are much more challenging and hopefully yield, something much more useful as well. Headspace being the other, 2 hours of effort might not sound like a lot, but it's something clouding up your head. As a dev, especially, these are things that we're, super protective about.
There's key use cases that we have in doing that very thing as well. One of our current clients, our engagement started to improve their processes, to look at offline, which is outside of our normal world that you would consider certainly A/B testing, and look at how we can drive that and improve that. They had 2 people full time manually scoring products, and in which order they would appear on the search results page. Not only was that time consuming, but also expensive to pay salaries for somebody to do that. It was based on an algorithm in their head. There was no science, no data behind it, and so far detached from what your audience is doing and how your audience are buying and how that changes seasonally. It was done by price, hunch, and nothing more. We engage with them, and by implementing an online scoring-based algorithm, it's not only freed them individuals up to focus on more important things at a time where resources are very tight and very, very sort of short in businesses, but that test delivered huge success by aligning a manual process with what users and customers are doing and driving it from that data, delivered enormous success for that client. So we should always, and it comes back again, how do we break that stigma of A/B testing? And it's looking outside of the box, thinking outside of the box, looking elsewhere, and looking how we can go along that journey, support clients across their full stack, and deliver groundbreaking things like that.
Yeah, definitely. We found this with COVID as well. When you have people doing things like merchandising, which are kind of business critical things on a daily basis, and something like COVID comes along and people get sick or they can't work or they get furloughed or something, you find that businesses won't be able to function anymore. So being well versed in tech in general, it's not A/B testing necessarily, even though again that's the vehicle by which we make sure we're doing the right thing. But you're able to either protect or, as we found, using data means that we actually managed to gain uplifts as well. So, what we're trying to say, automate all the things wherever you can. We do this a lot. We spend a lot of time automating things on behalf of clients as well as for ourselves. And yeah, where you manage to pull people away from that equation a little bit, you usually end up with things which are much more efficient and work better.
So another area that's been hurt by COVID, as we mentioned before, but also it's quite another costly area that businesses operate and functions within businesses. How do we better protect those limited resources during times like this? How can we, as a CRO business, protect them? And I think that's by the users that are on the site make the information, make key information, certainly at times like this, more accessible via FAQs. Just have it surfaced. If you work in travel and it's inevitable someone's going to come to your site during the lockdown period and they can't travel and they want to know how to cancel. Don't hide it, expose it, make it easy for them to find, easy for them to cancel, and they'll remember you for that and they'll come back. You will buy that lifetime, you will buy that client for longer, and it's important. Online as well, looking at things like chatbots and live chat. These are great tools and great products, but let's not go out and panic buy chatbots like we panic bought toilet rolls. It's unnecessary, yeah? If we're gonna get a chatbot, they're easy to deploy on our sites, but make sure they're triggered at the right times. Understand the data, understand your audience, and understand when that's gonna come up and interject on that journey. If we're just spamming people on your website with chatbots, which I'm seeing quite a lot at the moment, it's certainly more disruptive and it's not very helpful, and it clouds the view and people will be turned off by it. So make things more accessible and improve it and learn and take the data and develop that and move that forward.
Yeah, and there's a very relevant question we had beforehand as well from Anan. You said, digital innovation and improvements are really what we're all after as digital professionals. They can lead to potentially sensitive issues and topics of discussion. As more organizations continue to invest into digital innovation and have a channel shift strategy to encourage more digital use versus traditional methods, it can lead to redundant positions, for example, in telephony, as we were talking about, with back office functions being taken out of the business as a direct result. So, what's our experience of tackling this kind of a sensitive issue of having to communicate a digital strategy ahead of other channels like bricks and mortar? This is tough, and a lot of people, especially where you view your position in the company, it's quite often not as an advisor. So these are very much things that, well, as an advisor, but not as an exec. But these are very much things that management and execs would need to handle. But it's very much the way I see it. At least it's about candor and trust. If you can honestly communicate very challenging business shift decisions to people, then you would hope that people respond in kind as well. If you look at chatbots, for example, like we were talking about, if it did incredibly well, and we said we could shrink effectively a call center of 200 people down to 20, before you even go on that journey, how often do we have people communicating with their entire team and saying technology is advanced enough now that all this kind of boring manual menial stuff that you're doing shouldn't really be necessary? If it's a cost-cutting exercise, how many people actually sit down and say, essential to our survival is the ability to do these kind of things, but we're going to do our best to take care of you when we go down that journey. If you want to think more about it from advancement, then can you talk about it and frame things more from upskilling people? I wouldn't expect someone who's building tests to think about things at that high level, but if you are able to advise people, then it is very much a case of being honest. There is no magical thing beyond that. Providing the right data is useful. If people genuinely believe that the high street is dying, being able to prove that and show that to people and say, this isn't just a money-hungry decision, which is what a lot of these kind of redundancies often look like. They're actually saying, this is what we're seeing and this is why we have to do it. We have no choice, and just trying to be as human with people as possible. That's kind of where we see these things happening. Startups have the same challenge, same situations, and when the team's smaller, you end up having those same kind of chats with people higher up as well. Hopefully that answered Adnan's question.
And just to touch on that as well, and ties in quite nicely with the slide that we're looking at, actually. I don't think it's as black and white as the high street or online. I think the two exist in their own right, and it's how we bridge the gap and how we bridge the gap and with the interaction between those two environments. I mean, myself at home, I go home very, very often, or I'll be at home now very, very often, and the doorbell will be going continuously with soft white packages with Boohoo or other brands plastered all over them arriving. And that's generally got a number of items in there that are being returned. Yeah, I bought it in 2 sizes. I bought it in 2 colors because I didn't know which one I'd want or which one I'd like. How do we drive that? How do businesses react to that? And you could do something bridging the gap with, if someone's in a buying experience and they're 2 miles away from a branch, why not tell them you can have this delivered or you could pick up in 5 minutes time? If Screwfix and DIY retailers can have things click and collect instantly, why not better message that and bridge the high street, drive those people, but both capture the sale online and drive them into a store or a branch where you might get a cheeky little upsell at the checkout as well. So it's not an either or of online and the high street. We just need to learn and we need to evolve as individuals and businesses and how we better adapt that and go for that whole omni-channel goal as people have been banding around for some time. What are your thoughts, Sandeep? Take us through some solutions that you might have in mind.
Yeah, there's some really interesting things we've seen with tech. Been around for a little while now, actually, but predictive analytics, for example, if people are buying too many of something, quite often it's just a size and fit problem. For example, I'm a Ted Baker 5, I think, and a Jack Wills large. If I happen to choose to shop at Topman, with enough data, certain tools can probably recommend I buy like a quadruple XL Topman top. I've seen Fit Analytics, for example, as one that we vetted through testing a while ago. As an experiment, you could understand whether it leads to a sale or not. Average order value may go down, but as long as people are still buying, you could vet how many of a certain thing people are buying as well and understand the impact of that. But that's kind of where we sit on the intersection between not just testing, but actually understanding and adoption of technology as well. Tools like this would be awesome for too many returns because I hate returning stuff personally. I'm sure a lot of people are cool with it, but I hate the idea of losing 20 minutes of my day to go and drop off packages or do something like that. If a tool could say with 95% certainty, hey, people who bought clothes similar to you, in terms of shape and size, buy a Topman top in this size, are more likely to probably just buy that one and see what happens, than buy 3 of them and know that I've got to go and return stuff. So, understanding and having access to that level of data is probably something a lot of us do, to be fair. And if we do, finding a way to put it all together, whether it's with other tech or your own, and bring that back to people is quite useful. And the other one's trying to understand, if you look at order histories, for example, and it's a bit preachy. You've got to find the right way to do these kind of things. But if you understand that people always buy 3 of the same thing, and they always end up, for a given brand, for example, they always end up making a final decision and the other bits get returned. Can you remind them of that next time they go down that kind of an avenue and try and break the bad pattern that you don't want them to do? If these things work and people are receptive to them, there is a much broader impact to the company as a whole, in what you're making happen there. So yeah, kind of, really good value to thinking at least about these kind of things as well.
And so this slide kind of goes hand in hand with a question that we've been asked about. Certainly, it's a question from Richard about, do we see where a world where CRO could deliver faster and for startups and new websites rather than just helping improve sites. We certainly, in the environment that we work in, CRO is seen to be a fast-moving area of development and delivery on websites. I think back to the time of the cookie messaging coming around, so essentially messaging to users, and the cookie messaging landed about 4 or 5 years ago maybe, and a number of Webtrends clients at the time were caught on the back foot. They'd not implemented it, they'd not implemented a solution, and they didn't know what to do. We were presented with that problem by one of the world leading airlines, and within 25 minutes we've delivered it, a solution that worked, it ticked all the boxes, and it was live and rolling out to their website. And then on the back of that, stacked up another whole heap of other that wanted a quick delivery to drive things forward. CRO can deliver fast. People engage with CRO for as a pseudo CMS to fix problems because in-house developments and changes take time. So it's not always long strategic. Like I said earlier on, we should be looking forward. Yeah, we should always be looking forward, but it also has the benefits of the tactical deliveries that we may need to deliver as well. Sandeep?
Yeah, and there are things we've seen happen through CRO tools. Even recently, every site ended up with a COVID message talking about their status, saying, "Hey, things are fine, keep buying," or that they're struggling, whatever the situation was. Sometimes we see dodgy deploys end up breaking journeys, and stepping in with a CRO tool, if you're capable and you understand it and you're able to make that fix and save an experience. It's not something we advocate for. It's not something anyone would ever purchase a tool to do. But knowing that you have the ability to respond in an emergency is a very useful thing for anyone to be able to handle, I think. The one thing we would say, of course, is kind of do this only if you need to, because I know a lot of people get, very touchy about using CRO tools to be the de facto way in which you update websites. And the last one is just straightforward. I would hope, most of us, especially if we've been practicing, understand this and can explain it and talk people into it. Naturally, if you're seeing a poor ROI on marketing where you're pouring money into acquisition, things like PPC and email campaigns, perhaps influencer marketing or something where you're driving traffic to the site, but it's not connecting. Just very simply, just do more of these things. Understand who is struggling, where they're struggling. Come up with good ideas, test them, iterate. All of these things become very natural to us. I'd hope for this kind of a business problem. So we've got a few kind of key takeaways. A/B testing is a lot of things, clearly more than I've spoken about as well. But it is at least looking at incremental improvements. It hopefully does wrap personalization, looks at product rollouts, it looks at innovation. But CRO is much, much more. There's a whole manner of things from research and investigation through design, releasing, iterating. There is a whole bunch there. Research does matter. Wasting your time when we're building things is the worst thing because your time is finite at the end of the day. So understanding the actual problems and doing good research, you may or may not look at it as just running a test, but there is a whole wave of that comes before you should even run tests. Innovate or die in caps feels a bit aggressive. I apologize, but the idea being, leaders lead, and if you want a good brand or if you have a good brand, understanding customer demand, what's out there, what technologies people are becoming familiar with that will enter the mainstream and could affect the company, and trying to step in that kind of a direction and prove the value of those things, or at least that they're not hurting you. there's good value in that. It's making sure you're ahead of people instead of trying to catch up. Finding what hurts, solving real problems for people, not today problems, but things that could be a real threat to someone in a year or a few years from now. Not the easiest of things to convince people to do when a lot of people are very focused on today problems, or proving their worth today. But there's much more value in looking at things beyond the kind of here and now. And looking beyond lift, of course, it's difficult. Everyone wants it. These are the things we report on. But if you are able to work with people in a way in which they understand you're helping them as a company, we've been quite fortunate enough to find people who really see the value in what we're doing beyond just extra cash that we're making them. Then there's a huge amount to be said for that.
So Q&A then, Sandeep. We've had a good handful of questions come in. So just to quickly pick some off in the interest of time, we've got a couple of minutes left. Hemu has sent in a couple of questions. So question one, should we A/B test personalization experiences before we implement for targeted audience? Absolutely. Sandeep may disagree with me, but for me, if I'm making a change to my site, especially something around personalization, which is looking more at lifetime value and stickiness and things like that, we want to measure it. We want to make sure that it's working, that it's optimal, but more importantly, that it's not damaging the user's experience. So would you add anything to that, Sandeep? Or
Yeah, I think when and a lot of us here will get this already, but it's if you're making changes to an experience, understand the value of doing it, because this idea of things being a no-brainer is what a lot of us understand to not really be true. You can't personalize effectively unless you know the impact roughly of what that change is going to have.
Yeah. There's another question that's coming around reading the chat messages. Do you offer a self-service model which can use that costs less than a 90K a year contract? And what does that include? Ultimately, we offer full stack. So good question. Since we separated from Webtrends over 2 years ago now, we offer anything from a self-service license that starts at free, depending on the volume, and we offer 3-month trials, all the way up to our managed service that enterprise clients are using and getting great results from. And we offer anything in between. So we have what we call a hybrid, where we create any model that fits for you, your budgets, your business, and your needs. So yeah, if there's something you want to look at, then yeah, reach out and we'll look into that for you. Another question around showcasing the value of CRO to the business and looking at the revenues. How do we better showcase that to the business? I think for me, from my point of view and my experience in the roles that I've had, it's about bringing the business on the journey. We don't look at the aggregated roll-ups as a business over a year. We'll spend time when we do it over a quarterly view. Tests do degrade over time. It's just a fact of life, but the benefits still exist, but it might not be where it was when it first started. I think the key part and the key element is to keep the business engaged with CRO, not just at a smaller, low level, but at the highest level you can get within the business, and share the experiences, share the learnings, share the journeys. We've had some great initiatives from businesses in the past where they've got little boards in the offices where people go on and stick a star on it or vote for which one they think is going to win the test. That helps spread it around the organization and bring people on that journey. And it's a great way to get everybody interested and get that wider engagement across the business. Sandeep, any thoughts?
And I don't think there's, if people specifically ask us for it, sure, we roll up results, but more often than not we don't do it because there is no value in telling people that you've made them, in your example, 3 tests showing a 1% increase. Does that mean 3% increase a year? The reality is it doesn't. And if that's what you're reporting back to people, that in itself isn't true. So it's something we certainly stay away from. Um, per test, if you're reporting back and saying, for the data that we've observed, we see a result of X, 1% increase in your case. There is no harm to having a list of those and saying, look, here are all the good results that we're managing to achieve. But when you talk about combining results, unless you're running a giant MVT or having some kind of phased rollout approach where all of this data is being harvested and you're proving the value of an aggregate experience, it's certainly something we would avoid, talking about as a rolled up result.
And we're Sandeep, in the interest of time, we're overrunning, so I think we're just we've got one more question, but it wraps into the next slide. So it's all about many tools, integration with various tools, complicated to align with, and things like that. So if you want to,
we'll jump through this and circle back as well. I think that the one thing to point out as well, we are a CRO vendor. It'd be stupid not to talk about this, but we've been around for a while. At the start of the pandemic, we released a fully free tier. We're restricted only by how much traffic we handle. I promise you it's better than what else is out there. I've used a lot of tools in our time, especially free tier tools. It's certainly more comprehensive. We are full stack. I think there are more ways of integrating with us than I've seen most other tools on the market. Places you could integrate us at least. UIs are rebuilt from scratch. They're 2 years old, and the people that have designed and have worked on them are people who've been testing for a long time. And we innovate as well. Our most successful customers are the ones that come to us with actual business challenges and we solve them. And if that means stepping outside of the little box of being a CRO vendor, then we do that. We'll go and build data-driven things for people if needed. And yeah, I think that kind of brings us past 3 o'clock already. I appreciate a lot of people probably have other stuff to do. Thank you to the 50, 60-ish people that have stuck around for this long and listen to us drone on. For those who want to
speak for yourself, Sandeep.
For those who want to stick on, I think there are other questions floating around. I'll try and have a read through them, answer them directly. Give us a shout, if we've not been clear enough and stuff like that as well. But yeah, certainly thank you to everyone who stuck around. If you do want to get in touch with us, there's a lot of ways of making it happen as you'd expect. So it shouldn't be too much of a challenge. So yeah, just picking up these other questions then for those who want to stick around and listen. We've got one from Hemu saying, she's from, I assume she, but hi Hemu, from HSBC's Hong Kong optimization team. How can we make it easier to implement CRO process? There are a lot of tools and integration can be very complicated to align with. I think the most straightforward bit of that is picking the bits of the process to begin with, which are important to you. Most people already research really well. You will have analytics tools, you will understand friction points in the journey, maybe not to the kind of depth that we've spoken about, but you will, this data is to handle or can be added to. Understanding where the problems are is usually the very first place to start, whether it's with, research in the lab or whether it's, kind of aggregate data in an analytics tool. That's where I'd start. Which is really weird to say because we are an A/B testing vendor, but I do look at us as kind of the tail end of that process. So once you understand what a problem is, it becomes very easy to show people and say, look, everyone, understand this is a problem. And then the question beyond that is what you do about it. And that's where you can try and implement testing, learning, iterating, and making sure you deal with those problems. You know, how you choose to deal with them then comes to the bits in the middle and other things that you can do as well. You know,
looking at the integration, Sandeep, there's a comment there that there are many tools and integration very complicated to align. As an integrated product, we integrate well with other technologies to try and make that a seamless experience and to leverage that rich data that's out there and available, right?
Yeah. I mean, we do a good job of it now. A lot of other tools do as well, but if you're trying to integrate 10 tools in one go, that might be a challenge. But if you have a broad understanding of what you want to achieve, then start with the two most important tools to you. Most A/B testing tools will integrate very well with analytics, and that in itself is a great place just to start. You don't need to worry about a dozen tools and coming up with the mesh of how all of these things work. If unless you have the end goal in sight, that's the important thing.
Okay.
So yeah, hopefully that answers that, Himmel. I think there was a slightly broader point from Richard as well, just to address as well. Do we see a future where CRO can deliver faster and for startups and new websites rather than just improving existing sites? CRO and this idea of machine learning and AI, all of these things as we see them are going to become a mishmash of the same thing at some point. It's this idea of harvesting data, understanding and gaining insights, and then action systems. That's how AI works. That's how we work, but manually in the CRO market. So the two of these things are almost certainly going to cross paths. If you then look at the applications of what would you do with technology like that, yes, absolutely. You could very easily, maybe not easily today, but in the future, I certainly see a place where you could have websites built, high converting websites that flex. I've had this idea in the back of my mind for a long time where you would have an entire website where every bit of it has several variations that have been understood. If you have a checkout journey and you have an AI behind it, understanding how that checkout journey should look as people come in based on all the things you know about them. If someone were to sit down and try and build a CMS that worked that way, I'm sure they would manage today. The tech is already there. It's just a lot, and a lot of data to be had and trained and understood before you even get there, I think.
Okay, I think that wraps us up now, Sandeep. So all that's to say is thank you everyone for your time. Appreciate we've gone over 11 minutes. Hope you all found it engaging, and feedback is great. Any feedback's welcome, and we look forward to engaging with you again at some point in the future.
Yeah, thank you everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day and weekend not too far away as well.